Well, good morning, everybody. Back from a couple of days down south, and watched a little bit of speedway last night. Unfortunately, abandoned after the second heat because one of the riders got badly injured, and because of the fact that the paramedics had given him morphine, it needed to then be apparently another ambulance that he would travel in to the hospital. There's only one ambulance at the track, and it was going to be 6 hours before another ambulance was available because it's we're in the middle of or at least down in England, they're in their middle of their Easter holidays. So anyway, so as I say, a couple of the videos I did yesterday and the day before were down south. I got back in the early hours of the morning and very pleased to have received this T-shirt, which I'd ordered from eBay. Manitou County Planters, established 1985. Wear that one with pride. That was a me. That's a to me from me. First of all, I'm going to do this. Share this picture with you. That was the thumbnail to Why Is Kathleen Zellner One of the Best? Isn't it typical? As soon as I start doing a video, the dogs start kicking off. Anyway, hopefully they won't be making too much noise. And I posed the question, who were these three? Obviously, no doubt who that is. That's Sweaty Prize. However, the guy on the left, if you followed the Ryan Ferguson case, this is Kevin Crane, who obstructed Kathleen Zellner and her search for justice. So Zellner versus Kratz, but previously it was Zellner versus this guy Crane. And David Rudolph had the misfortune of crossing paths with this particular individual called Jim Hardin. And you know what the really sad thing is? That both Kevin Crane and Jim Hardin are no longer prosecutors. They are now judges. Yep. As for Kratz, I think he's on down the sewers somewhere. I'm not too sure where. Anyway, let me move back to this picture. It's a comment on the video I did yesterday from Dark Side of the Moon. Now, at least with the name Dark Side of the Moon and the thumbnail picture there can be no doubt that Dark Side of the Moon and myself are in agreement. Led Zeppelin are not the greatest band in the world, and for me, Supertramp, Genesis, Pink Floyd are better. But anyway, Dark Side, very, very interesting comment. What's your thoughts, Paul, on Dean Strachan saying in a 2016 interview about Ken's downfall, I feel really sad about it. Ken isn't a bad human being. He made mistakes. So I've written down some thoughts. First of all, part 3 of the poem published in 1816 by Anna Jane Vardell. The beginning of the third part goes, within this hollow cavern hung a ready, swift and tuneful tongue. If falsehood's honey it disdained, and where it could not praise was chained. And you know, I really feel that when Dean is being interviewed, you know, lawyers, they are, you know, they're as smart as politicians and often go into politics, don't they? I think he knew not to say, yeah, I was really pleased to see Ken's downfall. But I don't know that it wasn't just Dean being very polite to being asked that question, you know, and I think also you got to remember that's 2016. Kathleen Zellner has since discovered a lot of sort of wool that was pulled over Dean and Jerry's eyes. So yeah, I would definitely give Dean the benefit of the doubt there. He's just trying to be nice, and you know, doesn't want to offend the sort of the prosecution. Being a defense attorney, you know, you want to win your cases, but you don't want to do so by being sort of rude, vindictive, and nasty towards them, even though a lot of the time that is exactly how they are towards defense. It was interesting when I, back in 2016, when I had my very first conversation with Sheriff Robert Herman, when he he disclosed some very interesting things without me even asking or saying anything about it. He said, "Oh, me and Andy Colborne get on fine. You know, that there's no hard feeling about him running against me as sheriff," which is quite interesting because, as I say, I never asked him about that. I then had to check and see what the hell he was talking about. So yeah, not very subtle there, I don't think, Robert. But then, you know, we enjoyed our chats. But anyway, Robert said to me, came out directly and asked me the question, you know, do you think it was fair of Making a Murderer to highlight the sexting scandal that was, you know, years later, you know, goes back to, well, we don't know over what period Ken Kratz used to sext his victims and abuse his position of authority. Some have suggested that it goes way, way back before he became Calumet County district attorney, going back to his previous jobs. And it was only by sheer luck that his sexting was even discovered by journalist Ryan Foley. And yes, there's possibly it was a case of Ryan Foley was tipped off about Ken Kratz when it looked as if nothing was going to happen. That the DOJ and you know, the Attorney General's office, particularly Tom Fallon, was just going to sit on it and let it, you know, just let it go away. I think that was at the time of the Attorney General was Van Hollen, JB Van Hollen, if I remember rightly. So as I say, he did ask me, "Do you think it was fair?" And obviously, I knew what Sheriff Herman was thinking. You know, that it wasn't connected with the case. You know, and there was no need for the documentarians to put out the sexting scandal. I think, though, that when we discover the kind of abuse of the system that Ken Kratz used to enjoy, and abusing his power and authority, you know, I think it says so much about him as a prosecutor that although at the time I said, yeah, maybe Ken, maybe Robert, maybe it was a bit unfair of that because, as you say, it wasn't connected with the case. But as you dig deeper and deeper and deeper into what was going on over there at Calumet County with Ken, then you realize, nah, it's you know, the book by Mark Godsey, Blind Injustice, I think covers this really well. If you haven't read the book, well worth reading. Mark Godsey has written this excellent book called Blind Injustice, and it makes reference to Making a Murderer. But Mark Godsey was a prosecutor of the Ken Kratz type. When he took up a position in a university to teach law, he was told he had to run the Innocence Project within the campus, which he thought was ludicrous, because there was no need for any innocence project. People that are charged of a crime are guilty. End of. And he was one of these sort of Ken Kratz type prosecutors, a bit of a star within the prosecution business, if you like. And it was when he took over this project, working with the students, that he then began to realize what a what a bad person he had become. Tunnel vision, and confirmation bias. And that's exactly what we see with Ken Kratz, Jim Harding, Kevin Crane, all of these bad actors within the legal system. And you do get the impression that sometimes they are convinced of their own perfection, their infallibility. They wouldn't send an innocent person to jail, but they would that they would bend the rules a bit, in order to ensure that these terrible criminals get put away. And you also get the sense that when people are talking about Stephen Avery, it's like, well, even if Brendan didn't do it, and even if Stephen didn't do it, he did lots of other things, so he deserves to be where he is. The end justifies the means. One of the terrible things you realize as you follow more and more these cases is that Ken Kratz is your typical district attorney. He's not the only one that's ever abused his power and authority. There's loads of them. I remember when I went to I went and saw Dean and Jerry in Edinburgh at Usher Hall. Eunice and I went on the train, and it was quite good, but it was an hour late, so we couldn't stay for the end because of the train times. And we were right at the back. So when Jerry teamed up with David Rudolph to look at again Making a Murderer and The Staircase, I said to Eunice, do you want to go to they're doing a tour of Europe. Do you want to go up to Edinburgh to see them? No, you're okay. And then I said, what about Amsterdam? And that changed her opinion. Oh yes, I'd like to go to Amsterdam. So we went to Amsterdam, and their presentation was, I think it was all answering questions. Obviously with David Rudolph has his laptop to do his presentations, as does now Jerry. Jerry does a really fine presentation with slides and pictures. But as I was arriving at the theatre, Jerry arrived in a taxi, and he said, "Oh, have you got is that a question for us?" So, yeah, that's a question for you. I've got it written down because that's what we do. And they were kind enough to read and answer my question first, which was very simple. Ken Kratz, Jim Harding, who was the more unethical prosecutor? And David Rudolph gave a very good account of himself, pointing out that Jim Harding, had the body of the woman that was fell down the stairs in Germany, had that her body exhumed. Was she Elizabeth or Catherine? I can't quite remember. And then, much to the press's glee, then they had this convoy, of several hundred miles back to Durham to the coroner, who then came up with this incredible decision that in fact her death was by homicide, when the German authorities are quite happy with the fact that it's quite clearly an accident. and questioning the, the Germans and their ability to do, like a post-mortem. Absolutely ridiculous. But then, of course, Jerry got to talk about Ken Kratz. And, when you're facing as many Brady violations as he is, again, coming back to Dean Strang, he's not a bad fella. He's as worse. He's as bad as many others. They're as I say, they're all equally bad. Dean's comment, I think, just being polite at the time, a little bit like in the staircase when that blood expert, the Chinese fellow, I can't remember what his name was, but he met Duane Deaver and gave him a book and signed it and said, great work, all that kind. It's just, within this hollow cavern hung a ready, swift, and tuneful tongue. If falsehood's honey it disdained, but where it could not praise was chained. And I think these people are very polite. They if they're not going to criticize somebody, even though they know internally that what somebody's done, like Duane Deaver, was absolute garbage. And what Ken Kratz did, sexting and pulling the wool over their eyes. Although, as I say, back in 2016, we didn't know half of the antics of Ken Kratz. We certainly didn't know about the handing over of the bones. We didn't know about the CD, the Veely report. These are all things that Kathleen Zellner has since discovered. This whole Hoodlatch swab thing, just so dodgy. And the fact that Uyghur, obviously, and Kratz are close, work in the same county, work in Calumet, don't they? It does. Well, we don't know who it was that created this false swab, the exact line of custody, but it seems to be Uyghur. That he put it down as Hawkins' name, didn't he? But it wasn't signed by Hawkins. It was just a printed name. So very, very dodgy. So as I say, I would give Dean the benefit of the doubt and just point out that during the trial, Jerry actually tried to put Ken Kratz's lights out in one argument, and there were lots of arguments. I think I read somewhere that there were more meetings backstage, if you like, in Willis's office than normal. As I say, I would give Dean certainly give Dean the benefit of the doubt there. Obviously, Jerry has been a bit more vocal. The other thing that's interesting, of course, is people have said to, have accused Dean and Jerry, who set up this Centre for the Integrity of Forensic Science, because of all the BS that's been going on across the pond there with bite mark analysis. Gee whiz. And Sami Shabani doing experiments with holding people's heads in loos. It's nothing to do with science. And you go back to this hair comparison, don't you? Even fingerprinting. Remember the Madrid bombing? They actually reckoned it was some American that had the fingerprint matched, which it didn't. But the FBI said it did. They got it wrong. So yeah, I do think that, let's say, Jerry has been more vocal in his condemnation of Kratz, certainly in the TV interview with Kratz and Fassbender, and Jerry gets the last word in by saying, well, I believe 15 women. I believe these 15 women. In the end, he settled settled with just one of them. You know, the one that's featured, whose name at the moment escapes me. But, that's not really important. I remember talking to Rob Bellin, defense attorney over there in near Kenosha. Sorry, not Kenosha, Neenah, somewhere near Neenah, and a supporter of Eagle Nation Cycles. I remember asking him about the fact that, you know, Rob, you were one of 4 defense attorneys that Ken Kratz had hired, you know, and I don't know if they were sort of consecutive or at the same time, you know, but it was a rather funny comment along the lines of, you know, when you're facing that many charges, you need plenty of lawyers on your side. So anyway, my own thought on Ken is, I think similar to Kathleen Zellner's. What he did in the past was wrong, and eventually he will be made, hopefully, accountable for that. But what's really appalling is that, having been the prosecutor in the case, he then has to write a book. He then has to try and defend everything that he did completely wrong. And I know that Dr. Silkman, bless him, he gets absolutely fed up with the antics of Kratz. You know, oh dear, you know. And, you know, can't blame Dr. Silkman for being so peeved at Ken Kratz's carry on. I've never read the book, which was when I was engaging in via Twitter email, when I was having conversations with Ken. That's all he wanted to do, was just sell his books. It's bizarre, isn't it? You know, and just trying to put forward this this narrative of his, the lured to the yard, and, you know, all the evidence listed, you know, that relates to the you know, the fact that it's Steven Avery. And yet at trial, can you set the key aside? Because he knew perfectly well it was Manitowoc County planters that did that little trick. So yeah, so to sort of sum up what my thoughts, Dark Side, Pink Floyd, definitely one of the greatest bands in the world. As for Ken Kratz and Dean's comments, I would give him the benefit of the doubt and suggest that, you know, what he says publicly and what he thinks privately could be very, very different. But Dean and Jerry, they're just, at times they're just too polite, aren't they? You know, you wish sometimes they would show a bit more emotion, a bit more anger at the way that Ken Kratz succeeded in messing up their case. But now Kathleen Zellner is getting her own back. And I think that's one of the reasons why Dean and Jerry, you know, I've said on more than one occasion, you know, they do not take it personally at all that, you know, one of the claims by Kathleen Zellner is ineffective assistance of counsel. And when you think that that bookcase never made it into court, you know, and I'm thinking, hold on a sec, is this because, you know, the prosecution are the only ones allowed to present evidence? Why can't the defense? And there was no reason. There was no reason why Dean and Jerry couldn't have, you know, called for the bookcase to have been in court, and for Andy you know, Colburn to show exactly how this key was cleverly hidden. Anyway, and I know a lot of people point to the fact that Steve got 400,000, 140 of that went to Steve Glynn and Walt Kelly for their work in A, in getting him released, and B, the civil suit. That is an interesting question. How did 36 million get whittled down to 400,000 with no blame being attached to Manitowoc County? And we know that Laura Riccardi, in one of the phone calls to Steve, basically tells him off. Why did you do that? Why did you accept their offer of 400,000? You know, he would have been far better off insisting that the depositions of Kosurik and Vogel still went ahead. I don't see any reason why they had to be cancelled. I don't know who agreed to them being cancelled. Anyway, like I said, I think it's a case of being too polite. But what they say publicly and what they say privately, two different things. And yeah, we know that that Dean and Jerry have become more vocal. Some people have complained about the fact that, you know, they're doing the world tours now. Well, yeah, because Making a Murderer is such a phenomenon that it's given them the opportunity to tour the world. I don't think they're making huge amounts of money at it. I'm pretty sure that they don't. And I know that they've set up this Centre for the Integrity of Forensic Science. And, you know, by the letter of the law, Steve and Brendan are guilty. The defense attorneys think that the court, the jury got it wrong. And Dean says, well, I hope. You know, at one point, he is quite eloquent. He says, well, you know, I hope Stephen Avery really is guilty, because, you know, it's horrible to think that if he's innocent and he's spending time the rest of his life in prison, that's pretty bad news. Yeah, as I said, going back to the 400,000, 140 went to Glyn and Kelly, and that left just 160,000. Which, as I say, seems a bit bizarre that they settled for such a low figure. You know, I mean, I think it's 1/3, isn't it? 1/3. That's usually the split. It's a bit more than 1/3, isn't it? Anyway, it was split up between I think I worked it out once. It was something like, you know, so many sixths and so many sixths or fifths or whatever. But you know, as I say, the interesting thing for me is that that 240,000 people are saying, you know, well, that should have secured, you know, his release, you know, with that amount of money to spend. But when you realize, you know, the state of Wisconsin spent over $1 million to prosecute and secure the conviction of Stephen Avery, which, as far as they're concerned, hey, that was money well spent. Despite Michael Griesbach, when I got in touch with him, you know, a bit devious, I said to him, you know, many thanks for your book, which I couldn't put down for a week. And he took that as being a compliment. When in fact, if anybody that's read the book, the first 2/3 of the book are very, very good. They deal with the wrongful conviction, 1985 case. And then for the last third, you know, even saying, you know, what great cops, you know, Colburn and Lencar, you know, what great guys they are. What a great guy Ken Kratz is. You know, it's like, what? You know, you've certainly changed your tune. As I say, when I got in touch with Griesbach when he wrote back, because I'd asked him about the, you know, what sort of settlement would Steve have got for the 85 case, and he reckoned somewhere between 3 and 5 million. Well, if you've spent $1 million to save between 2 and 4 million, as I say, as far as the state of Wisconsin is concerned, that's money well spent. But the main thing, I don't think it was so much about the money. It was the fact that the sheriff's department, and this is what it all boils down to, isn't it? We hear that they are not covered by insurance, certainly not for the sort of shenanigans that they embarked on. You know, the police department, Manitowoc Police Department, can't remember the name of the detective that actually went to Tom Kasurik and said, you know, you've got the wrong guy. It's this Gregory Allen. And Kasurik says, no, I've got authority here. This is my case, so it's, we're going to pursue you. And people at the attorney's office, at Vogel's office, saying to him, you know, we don't think it's him. We think it's this other fellow. I never listened. So, you know, so when you look at those sort of shenanigans, you know, the phone call to Andy Colburn, and it's 8 years before he writes a report. This crackerjack detective, who was the only one after 6 searches that was able to locate the key, writes so slowly. It took him 8 years to write a report about the phone call. And you see the cover up of that, you know, the sort of brush that under the carpet. You know, you see the real problem for the sheriff's department was that the really just the embarrassment of it, you know, and also the fact that when they were when Steve is suing them, you know, the named individuals, they're facing bankruptcy, you know, they're facing huge amounts of money, you know, possible loss of house and loss of cars and pensions and all that kind of stuff, you know. It does sort of the benefit of hindsight, you know, when you hear, I think it's Steve Lynn talking about the fact that, you know, or Walt Kelly, you know, we warned Stephen Avery that, you know, that there could be a lot of things said that you haven't heard before. The one thing we never told him was that you could be charged with murder. But the benefit of hindsight and knowing how that sheriff's department works, much as Steve wanted to, you know, to show that he's back, he's, you know, he's not going to be run out of town by the sheriff's department. He should have just gone into hiding for, you know, for the until the depositions and the settlement were decided, but decided to go back to Manitowoc. You know, was that a bit naive, particularly of his lawyers, not to warn him? One wonders. Anyway, I think we've kind of covered quite a lot of thoughts there, and maybe there will be thoughts that that have crossed your mind that you want to put in the comments. But as I say, that it's a beautiful poem by Anna Jane Bardell, who was a prolific writer of poems, lived between 1781 and 1852. And as I say, that poem was published 1816. It's got 5 parts to it altogether, but my particular favourite is that third part. Within this hollow cavern hung a ready, swift, and tuneful tongue. If falsehood's honey it disdained, and where it could not praise was chained. If bold and virtues caused it spoke, yet gentle concord never broke. That silent tongue will plead for thee when time unveils eternity. I might leave the link to the whole lot if you read. You'll be able to find it. You'll be able to find it. Anna Jane Bardell. The title is called "Behold This Ruin, 'Twas a Skull." Anyway, I think we'll leave it at that, and I better get these dogs off on a walk. They've calmed down a bit, which is good. So we'll catch you soon. I've still got this last part of the dude and Professor Leo. We will get round to that eventually. Okay, bye for now.